On the day of my father's funeral, instead of supporting me, my mother accused me of being the reason for his, and in that painful moment, I realized my own family saw me as the cause of their grief rather than part of it. I cheated on my wife on the day of my father's funeral. Not during the service, not at the reception, but 3 hours after we buried him, while Sarah was making phone calls to relatives and cleaning the house we'd inherited. I was supposed to be helping her. Instead, I was in my childhood bedroom with Rebecca, my high school girlfriend who'd shown to pay her respects. The worst part, I'd been planning it since the moment I saw her walk into the funeral home that morning. Dad had been sick for 8 months. Cancer ate him alive while I watched, helpless, as he shrank from the man who taught me to throw a curveball into something that needed help getting to the bathroom. Sarah held my hand through every doctor's appointment, every sleepless night in the hospital, every conversation about treatment options that weren't really options at all. She took time off work. She cooked meals I couldn't eat. She held me when I cried, which was more than I care to admit. But when Rebecca walked in wearing that black dress that hugged her in ways I remembered too well, something sick and selfish took over. Maybe it was grief. Maybe it was the realization that Dad would never give me advice again, never see grandchildren if Sarah and I had them, never know if I turned out to be the man he raised me to be. Maybe I was just a coward looking for an escape from the suffocating weight of loss. Look exactly the same, she whispered during the service, leaning close enough that I could smell her perfume. The same perfume she wore senior year when we'd sneak out to the lake, and I'd convince I was in love. Sarah squeezed my hand tighter. She thought Rebecca was being inappropriate. She was right. After we lowered Dad into the ground, people came back to the house. Sarah worked the room like the angel she's always been, making sure everyone had food, thanking them for coming, accepting condolences with grace I didn't deserve. I should have been beside her. Instead, I kept finding excuses to talk to Rebecca. Remember when Dad taught us to fish? She said, cornering me in the kitchen. We're so bad at it. Still am, I said, and she laughed that laugh that used to make my stomach flip in 10th grade. Some things never change. She was wrong. Everything had changed. I was 32, married to a woman who loved me unconditionally, mourning the loss of the best man I'd ever known. But standing there with Rebecca, I felt 16 again, and reckless and hungry for something that wasn't responsibility or grief or consequences. I should check on Sarah, I said, but I didn't move. She seems like she has everything handled. Rebecca said, stepping closer. Always were attracted to the responsible type. The dig at Sarah should have made me walk away. Instead, it made me angry at my wife for being everything Rebecca wasn't. Stable, loyal, present for the hard stuff instead of showing only when it was convenient. I miss talking to, Rebecca continued. We had something special. We had nothing special. We had teenage hormones and shared classes and the kind of dramatic relationship that feels earth-shattering when you're 17 and embarrassing when you're in. But grief makes loss makes nostalgic for things that were never as good as remember. I miss it too. I lied. Or maybe it wasn't a lie. Maybe I did miss the simplicity of being with someone who didn't know about my student loans or my anxiety. Or the way I sometimes stared at the ceiling at 3 a.m. wondering if I was turning into my father. Rebecca knew the version of me that existed before real got complicated. An hour later most of the guests had left. Sarah was in the kitchen with my aunt, going through casserole dishes and planning when to return them. I found Rebecca upstairs, standing in my old bedroom, looking at the baseball trophies I'd never bothered to pack away. Mom said I could use the bathroom here, she said. Hope that's okay. My mother had been drinking since the service ended. Of course she'd sent Rebecca upstairs. Who's fine? I said, closing the door behind me. Everything was fine. Dad was dead. My wife was downstairs cleaning after his funeral while I stood in my childhood bedroom with another woman. The woman who'd broken with me the day before graduation because she needed to experience college without being tied down. The woman who'd called me 3 years later, crying because some fraternity guy had cheated on her, asking if I ever thought about what might have been. I should have thought about Sarah. About the vows I'd made 18 months earlier. About the woman who'd held my hand while Dad died and never once complained about the burden I'd become. Instead, I thought about escape. About pretending for just a few minutes that I was someone else. Someone who didn't have to figure out how to live without his father. Someone who didn't have to be strong for everyone else. I used to dream about this room, Rebecca said, sitting on my old twin bed. About, Rebecca, I know married. I know this is wrong. But seeing today, seeing how much I just want to help. She didn't want to help. She wanted to feel important. Wanted to be the one who comforted me when my wife couldn't. But I was too broken and selfish to care about her motives. Sarah's downstairs. I said weakly. Sarah doesn't have to know. That should have been the moment I walked away. Should have been the moment I remembered that I'd married the woman downstairs because she was everything Rebecca wasn't. Kind. Faithful, present when things got hard instead of disappearing when got complicated. Instead I sat down next to her. I don't know how to do this without him, I said. Do what? Any of it. Be a husband. Be someone worth something. She put her hand on my leg. Or worth something to me. It was a line. Obviously a line. But grief had made me desperate for someone to tell me I mattered. And I was too to see that the woman downstairs had been telling me that every day for 8 months. I shouldn't be here with, I said. But and then she kissed me. I should have pulled away. Should have thought about Sarah's face when she laughed at my terrible jokes, or the way she'd held me the night Dad died, or the fact that she'd put her on hold to help me through the worst experience of mine. Instead, I kissed her back. 20 minutes later, I was the kind of man my father would have been ashamed to call his son. Sarah found out 3 weeks later. Not because I confessed, though I should have. Not because Rebecca said anything, though she probably should have. Sarah found out because my mother, and bitter about losing Dad, decided my wife deserved to know what kind of man she'd married. He was upstairs with that troll-op while we're cleaning my kitchen. She slurred in the phone at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. Sarah woke me by shaking my shoulder, her face white with shock and something that looked like disgust. Mother just told me something interesting, she said. My stomach dropped. In 3 weeks I'd convinced it hadn't happened. Not really. It was grief, not choice. A moment of weakness, not a betrayal. I'd even started believing my own lies. Sarah, let me explain. Explain what? How ex-girlfriend on the day of father's funeral, while I was downstairs cleaning after family. She never swore. In 5 years together I'd heard her say, maybe twice. Hearing the word come out of her mouth was like being slapped. It didn't mean anything. It didn't mean anything. She repeated it like she was trying to understand a foreign language. Had with another woman 3 hours after we buried father, and it didn't mean anything. I was grieving. I wasn't thinking straight. I was grieving too. Her voice cracked. I love father. He was the closest thing to a dad I had after mine died. But instead of grieving with my husband, I spent that day taking care of everyone else because couldn't be bothered to help. She was right. While she'd dealt with relatives and food and thank cards and all the horrible logistics that come after someone dies, I'd been upstairs destroying our marriage. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I don't know what I was thinking. Weren't thinking about me. Weren't thinking about us. We're thinking about, like always. Like always. That hit harder than I expected because it was true. When Dad got sick, Sarah had put her on hold to help me deal with it. When he died, she'd planned the funeral because I was too broken to make decisions. When I needed space to grieve, she gave it to me. When I needed someone to hold me while I cried, she did that too. And when I needed someone to blame for not being enough, I'd chosen her instead of Rebecca. Please don't leave me, I begged. I'll do anything. Counseling, therapy, whatever want. It was a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pick milk. A mistake is missing an anniversary. This was a choice. Chose her over me on the worst day of instead of letting me help through it. She started crying then, and it was worse than her anger. Sarah cried like someone who just realized the person they trusted most in the world had never deserved it. I can't look it right now, she said. I can't be in this house with. I'm going to my sister's. For how long? I don't know. Maybe forever. She packed a bag while I sat on our bed, watching her fold clothes with the same careful precision she brought to everything. Even leaving me, she was organized about it. Sarah, please, talk to me. What's there to talk about? Made choice. On the day we buried father. Chose someone else. It wasn't about choosing. It was about pain. About not knowing how to handle losing him. She stopped packing and looked at me with something that might have been pity. I lost him too, but I didn't betray the person I loved because of it. After she left, I called Rebecca. I don't know why. Maybe I thought she'd make me feel better about destroying my marriage. Maybe I wanted to blame her for starting something that was always my fault. I heard Sarah found out, she said without preamble. Who told? Mother called me. She's proud of herself. Of course she was. Mom had never liked Sarah, thought she was too good for me. Turns out she was right. Sarah left me. I'm sorry. Long pause. I don't know. Part of me hoped. When called. Hoped what? That maybe we could try again. For real this time. The delusion in her voice made me sick. She thought what happened between us meant something. Thought it was the beginning of a love story instead of the end of my marriage. Rebecca, what we did was a mistake. I was grieving and I made the worst decision of my. It wasn't about wanting. It was about being too weak to handle my own pain. Another pause. That's not what it felt like. That's what it was. Toso used me. We used each other. The difference is, I had something real to lose. She hung on me. I deserved it. The next few weeks were, Sarah wouldn't answer my calls. Her sister wouldn't let me come to the house. I hired a lawyer because I was pretty sure she was going to file for divorce, but mostly I just sat in our empty house, surrounded by sympathy cards and casserole dishes from the funeral, wondering how I'd become the kind of person who could someone like Sarah. I kept thinking about the last thing Dad said to me. He was barely conscious, pumped full of morphine, but he grabbed my hand and whispered, "Take care of her. She's good for." He meant Sarah, the woman who'd sat beside his hospital bed reading him books when he was too weak to hold them himself. The woman who'd researched every treatment option, called every specialist, never gave hope even when the doctors did. I'd promised him I would take care of her. Instead, I'd destroyed her. 3 weeks after Sarah left, she came back to get more clothes. I was waiting in the kitchen like a pathetic puppy, hoping she'd changed her mind. "We need to talk," she said. For a second I thought she meant about reconciliation, then I saw the papers in her hand. "I filed yesterday," she said. "I'm sorry I had to find out this way, but I couldn't bear to tell on the phone." Even while divorcing me, she was kinder than I deserved. "Sarah, please. Can't we try counseling? I'll do whatever it takes to fix this." Can't fix this. Can't unfuck her. Can't take back choosing someone else on the day that should have brought us closer together. It was one time, one horrible mistake. It wasn't though that was bad enough. It was everything else. The lying, the sneaking around. The fact that while I was taking care of everyone else, we're upstairs betraying our marriage. It was the choice made to me instead of letting me help. She was right. It wasn't about the physical act. It was about the moment I decided my pain mattered more than her trust. The moment I chose temporary escape over permanent love. I said desperately. "I know, dude, that's what makes this so much worse. Loved me and still chose to me in the worst possible way on the worst possible day." She left the papers on the counter and walked toward the door. "Sarah, wait." She turned around, and for a second, I thought she might change her mind. "Father was a good man," she said. "He would be so disappointed in right now." That was the last thing she ever said to me. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. Sarah kept her word about making it as painless as possible, which somehow made it worse. She could have taken half of everything, could have made me pay for what I'd done, but instead she just wanted out. She took her clothes, her books, and the picture of us from our wedding day. Everything else, she left behind. "I don't want reminders," she said when I asked why she wasn't taking furniture we'd picked out together. I understood. I was a reminder too. My friends found out, of course. Small town, big scandal. The guy who cheated at his father's funeral became a cautionary tale people whispered about at the grocery store. Most of them took Sarah's side, which was the right choice. The few who didn't were the kind of people I didn't want defending me anyway. Work was awkward. Sarah had been to company picnics, Christmas parties, had friends there. Everyone knew what I'd done, and everyone had opinions about it. I started eating lunch alone, stopped going to happy hours, became the guy people felt sorry for instead of the guy they wanted to be around. My mother, the one who'd gleefully destroyed my marriage, died 8 months after the divorce was final, in her sleep. The funeral was small. Sarah didn't come, and I couldn't blame her for that. Rebecca did, which felt like a sick joke. "I'm sorry for loss," she said afterward. "Thank Paul. Do you ever think about what might have been different if we'd gotten back together after high school?" The question made me want to scream. She still didn't understand that what happened between us wasn't about her, wasn't about rekindled romance or second chances. It was about me being too weak to handle grief like a man. "If we'd gotten back together after high school, I never would have met Sarah," I said. "And Sarah was the best thing that ever happened to me, but cheated on her." "Yeah, I did, and that's something I have to live with for the rest of my poem." She looked confused, like she couldn't understand why I wasn't grateful for the opportunity to be with her. "I should go," she said. "Yeah, should." I never saw her again. A year after the divorce, I ran into Sarah at the grocery store. She was with someone new. Tall guy, nice smile, the kind of man who probably never made her doubt her worth. They were buying ingredients for dinner, the mundane domestic task that Sarah and I used to do together every Sunday. She saw me before I could duck down another aisle. She said quietly, "Hi." The man beside her looked uncomfortable, probably wondering if I was going to cause a scene. I wanted to tell him he had nothing to worry about. Sarah had moved on with someone who deserved her, and I was just the from her past who'd taught her what to avoid in the future. "How are?" she asked, and I could tell she was just being polite. "I'm okay, look good, happy," she smiled, and it was the first genuine smile she'd given me since before Dad died. "I am happy." "Good. That's good." The man beside her shifted his weight, clearly wanting to move along. Sarah noticed. "Well, it was nice seeing," she said. Too, they walked away, and I stood there in the cereal aisle, watching the woman I'd loved and lost disappear around the corner, with someone who would never her the way I had. I finished my shopping and went home to my empty house, surrounded by furniture that reminded me of the I'd thrown away. I'd kept everything Sarah left behind, partly because I was too lazy to redecorate and partly because I deserved to be surrounded by reminders of what I'd lost. That night I called my therapist. I'd been seeing Dr. Martinez for 8 months, ever since the divorce papers were served. She was patient with my self-pity, direct about my mistakes and honest about my chances of finding peace. "I saw Sarah today," I said. "How did that make feel?" "Like the biggest piece of whoever lived." We've talked about this language use about, but it's true. I am a piece of. I destroyed the best relationship I ever had because I was too selfish to grieve properly. Made a terrible choice in a moment of extreme pain. That doesn't define entire worth as a person. It defines my worth to Sarah. It defines my worth to anyone who knows what I did. What did was wrong. Unforgivably wrong. But can choose how to move forward from here. Move forward to what? Who's going to trust someone who cheated at his father's funeral? Who's going to believe I won't do it again when things get hard? Someone who sees they've learned from this. Someone who believes people can change. Do believe people can change. Long pause. I believe want to change. Whether actually do depends on the choices make going forward. I wanted to believe her. Wanted to think that someday I could be the kind of man who deserved love again. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sarah's face when she found out what I'd done. The shock, the betrayal, the way she looked at me like I was a stranger. 2 years after the divorce, I heard Sarah got engaged, to the guy from the grocery store, probably. Someone who'd never given her a reason to doubt him. Someone who'd never chosen temporary pleasure over permanent commitment. I didn't go to the wedding obviously, but I heard it was beautiful. Small ceremony, close friends and family, everything Sarah had wanted when we got married. I wondered if she thought about me at all that day, or if I was just a footnote in her story now. The mistake that taught her what real love looked like. I hope she didn't think about me. I hope she was so happy with her new that our old one felt like something that happened to someone else. 3 years out, I'm still alone. I've been on a few dates, nothing serious. Hard to build trust with someone when have to explain why marriage ended. Hard to convince someone changed when not sure have. I still live in the house Sarah and I bought together. Still sleep in the bed we picked out, still eat at the table where we used to plan our future. I know I should move, should start fresh somewhere else, but leaving feels like admitting it's really over. Like accepting that I'll never get the chance to make things right. Dad's been gone for almost 4 years now. I still think about what he said in the hospital, about taking care of Sarah. I failed him in the worst possible way. Failed him and failed her and failed. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd made a different choice that day. If I'd stayed downstairs with Sarah instead of going upstairs with Rebecca. If I'd grieved with my wife instead of betraying her. If I'd been the man Dad raised me to be instead of the coward I became. But there's no point in wondering. I made my choice, and Sarah made hers. She chose to build it with someone who wouldn't her. I chose to live with the consequences of the only person who ever loved me unconditionally. I go to therapy every week. I volunteer at a grief counseling center, trying to help other people handle loss better than I did. I work, I pay my bills, I exist. It's not much of a, but it's what I deserve. The worst part isn't the loneliness, though that's bad enough. The worst part is knowing that somewhere out there, Sarah is happy with someone else. Someone who would never do what I did. Someone who deserves the love I away. I destroyed the best thing in my on the worst day of my, and now I have to live with that choice every single day until I'd. The man who cheats on his wife at his father's funeral doesn't get a second chance at happiness, and maybe that's exactly how it should be.